I believe we're live. Everybody, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Let me double check to make sure that everything's going on the stream end. I'm going to open this up just to check. Looks like we're live. So if anybody has any issues hearing us, let us know. Looks like you guys have got some chat already going on. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfill, as some people know me, and joining me tonight is my brother
Joey, aka Radlor.
and my wife. If she,
Hi, I'm Chris. Yeah, good evening. Yeah.
so she's new to Discord, and so we're gonna have some fun tonight because she's accidentally disconnected herself from the video a couple times when she's muted her microphone. So we're in the same room, so her mic picks up everything, so she has to mute herself. So we'll see if how that goes as we get going. Um, but welcome everybody. I think we got everything going here. I'm checking chat real quick. So guy like says he's making cookies with the family. He's got his earbuds in. All right, cool. Scribbles is here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sunrise is consistent, but glad the game goes well. All right, so welcome everybody. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the new project that we're working on. We've been kind of teasing it a little bit throughout the month of February. We've been doing some pre-production work, but tonight we're actually going to be showing a little bit of what we've been working on and talking about it in greater detail. So that everybody can understand what we've got going on. So the project is called Project Dramond, and it is a brand new fantasy world that we've created. It's a pandemic project, is exactly what this is. We all have, well, not so much Joey, but my wife and I, Chris and I, have an abundance of free time. And we were looking at what we were going to work on next. And we've been doing a lot of cooking shows. So we've got the Lotro Cooking in Real Life series that I do on my YouTube channel. And then she has a Patreon for her Mexican dishes, which you just made. What did you make today? Cheesecake. Oreo.
Yes, was cheesecake. Yeah, was delicious.
It was delicious. I had a piece about an hour ago, an Oreo blueberry cheesecake. So we're doing lots of different things there, and working on new science. I was working on a new science fiction novel throughout the month of February. I figured we'd do something new and exciting because Chris has been doing a lot of drawing and stuff recently, and I said, well, if you're enjoying drawing, why don't we maybe just work on this? Work on something together, and then got talking to Joey and was like, let's just do this. So, if you haven't had a chance to already check the Patreon page, we revamped the Patreon page yesterday and today. So all the information about what is Project Dramond is there. A whole bunch of screenshots, a whole bunch of videos, a bunch of other stuff, and we've already got the first couple of weeks of posts already scheduled out in advance. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the project tonight and explain what it is. So it's a three-part project. The first part is a tabletop world campaign setting and module. So I'm working on a rule set completely from scratch, and we're doing the whole world, and we're doing the first campaign module, which is going to be basically an adventure from levels 1 to 5, and then beyond that, we're going to look and see how this goes and how much time it takes, and everything else, and then we'll probably get into that. The second part of the project is a new book and possibly a new book series. We'll see how that goes, but it's starting off with one book for now, and we're doing it in the vein of Dragonlance Chronicles. Maybe you could even probably draw some parallels with the Icewind Dale trilogy or some of the Forgotten Realms stuff. But I'd say the primary source of the style that I'm working on is definitely the Dragonlance Chronicles. And Chris is working on concept art for both the book and the uh, tabletop, and we're gonna um, show some of that here during the stream a little bit. Some of you have maybe seen some of that being teased out because we have some subscribers on the Patreon already, and we've been teasing a little bit out on TikTok as well. And then Joey and I are the ones who are coming up with the story and working on the lore of the world and everything else. And part of what's on the Patreon page is the very first brainstorming session that we had when we sat down and recorded everything. It wasn't actually the very first session because we had to do a little pre-production in February, but I would say it was the third, probably the third time we sat down after we had some basic ideas of what we were going to be working on. That's up over on the Patreon page. It's about an hour, a little over an hour long, and you can get a good idea of what the world story is, or at least what the basis for the world story is, and where we're going with the actual history of the world, and sort of the idea that we're looking for the book in terms of how we're going to set the adventuring party up, how those characters are going to meet, and the basis of the first. I'd say we've already got the first half a dozen chapters kind of already planned out in terms of how that adventure is going to kick off and get going. So that video is already up, and then I've got um, the first of the map making videos up, which is when I actually went in and did the hand drawn version of the map. And since then, I've done 3 additional videos where I've gone in now to Incarnate, and I'm taking that map and putting it into a digital format. And that's probably going to take me 10 or 12 sessions to do that. And that sounds good. Mr. Godliak is saying he likes your concept art so far, Chris. So thumbs up. Are you unmuting yourself to say something? You looked like you were getting ready to unmute yourself.
Yes, I say thank you so much.
All right, so um, tabletop world rule set novel in the series, and then Joey is working on the third part of this. He's the one primarily working on this, and I may be jumping in to help him after I've wrapped up the all the writing that I have to do over the next 6 to 8 months. But he's going to be working on an adventure game in the style of the old point and click adventure games. If any of you played like the old King's Quest games, or the Quest for Glory games, or the Space Quest series, all the early Lucasfilms games, as well as like some of the Sierra games and stuff like that. Those types of games. We're going to be using the same world, the same setting, everything else. He's going to be working on that simultaneously as I'm working on all this stuff with the world building, lore, and everything else. We're doing the Unreal Engine this time. I know the past, since 2014, you and I have worked extensively in the Unity engine on the Saga of Leucemia, but now that we're in this new project, we were looking at the pros and cons. I know one of the reasons that we went with Unity back in the day was because it was free at the time, and Unreal was not. And Unreal is now available, and they have some very nice tools. I think they have way better tools in terms of what you've been looking at anyway. I'll let you speak on that, Joey, because I got to go read chat because I see some chat going off. So why don't you talk about Unreal and stuff?
Yeah. So far from diving into it, they have a lot more resources at their disposal. Um, Obviously, a lot bigger platform. Back in the day, Unity was when I got into it. It was like the only one that had, an asset store and all this stuff. But Unreal, it's unreal, the amount of resources they have, and just like even the courses that they have available, where you can uh, just if you're like, oh, this looks interesting, I would love to learn about that, and never done that, and they have a whole course of basic information to get you going in that, and just yeah, they have a lot more budget probably to
Probably.
work with.
I'd say a lot bigger budget. So Himvar is asking, is this book going to be able to drive through RPG? Is it going to be print on demand or physical in some way? At the moment, there are no plans for anything physical, but I'm going to say that's just for the moment. Um, Obviously, once we get done with this, and we get to the point where it's actually ready to be published, so to speak, we could definitely look at those things. But for the moment, it's being planned as digital only, PDFs only, etc. And is this fifth edition or separate? It's a separate homebrewed system. So um, this is a mixture of. It's a little bit of everything, but I'm basically going back to second edition AD&D is one of my favorite systems, but obviously the world has come a long way since then, so I'm not doing THACO or anything like that. But I am looking at the homebrew system that I created over the years, which is a mixture of second edition AD&D and six-sided die, which I use a lot. I use a lot of six-sided dies for opportunities and just chance rolls, and so it's a homebrew system in and of itself. Um, it is a class-based uh, RPG. So in that sense, in terms of I'm assuming you're asking tabletop at this point with that question. Is it class or skill based? The tabletop game is very much based on a class-based system. So you're going to see the traditional classes. Plus, we've got some really interesting ideas for our own subclasses and stuff. But um, class-based, not skill-based. So that's going to be fun. So we're going to be going back to, which is different than what we've been working on for the past few years, obviously. But this is definitely a class-based game. Now, as far as the single player game, the point and click adventure game that Joey's working on, one of the reasons we decided to do it that way is because we're looking at just doing something simple that we can do as a puzzle-based narrative game. And that took us back to the adventure games of yore, because if you look at, especially like King's Quest or Space Quest, you didn't have any classes in those games. Your character was just, you were the main character of a story, and your job was to go through the story and solve puzzles and have an adventure. And so that's what we're focused on. Whereas Quest for Glory added combat into the mixture. So I can say one of the things we've talked about is the first iteration of this is going to be a puzzle-based narrative game. And then if everything goes well and people like the game and it's something that everyone enjoys, then when we get around to doing the second version, we're probably going to add combat to that and start fleshing it out from there. And we've talked about, if everything does really, really well and this goes out beyond Patreon over the next year or so, then we would look at doing probably a top-down isometric full-on, RPG styled game where you can go in with, 6 characters, aka Baldur's Gate type thing. But I don't want to get too much into that because that's future stuff that may never happen. We don't know yet. That's just, stuff that we've talked about. Um, yeah, this is definitely homebrew. Well, here's the thing with D&D. As great as D&D is, it's everywhere. It dominates everything. Um, so it's better to do homebrewed because it's different, it's unique, it gives you a bit of a niche. Plus, I like my homebrew system. Um, I would urge you to, if you've never played King's Quest, it's nothing like Baldur's Gate. Um, it's single player, but it's a, I would go back and look at the old King's Quest games, look at the old Quest for Glory games, and take a look at those, and you'll see what we mean by point and click adventure games. You could even look at Indiana Jones and I think it was Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis was one of the LucasArts games that they did. It's in that style, but you have a single character that you create a single character that you can control in a scene, and then you're clicking on objects and solving puzzles within that scene. Dramond, it's literally, I was sitting here thinking of, it doesn't mean anything. It's a, I was thinking of names. I was like, I need a name for the project because it's a placeholder name. We're obviously not using any names for the project yet because we want to keep all the finalized names and everything under wraps until we're maybe 3 months out from launch, and then we'll go in and fill in all the placeholder names. And so I was just the first thing that popped in my head was Drummond Cost from Star Wars, but that is spelled completely different, and I didn't even know it at the time. I was just like, oh, Dramond, that sounds like a cool name, and I put it in, and then I looked up Drummond Cost today, and I was like, well, at the very least, mine is spelled completely different, even though that's phonetically what I was hearing in my head was Drummond Cost. Um, and yeah, there's web emulators and stuff. You can also like I have like the Quest for Glory pack. I bought it on GOG for like $7 or something, and they use a DOS emulator. But yeah, there's a lot of old ways. But you could also look at videos because like Joey has watched a lot of the videos. He was just watching actually before this. He was looking at like one of the first King's Quest games. The earliest games were text based, like you had to use text commands, but eventually they all became point and click. Um, Air Today, Gone Tomorrow was one of my favorites in the King's Quest series. As far as Quest for Glory goes, they're all great, but that first one um, when they did the graphics update and moved it to a point and click, uh, that was one of my favorite games growing up. Just amazing. So we're still finalizing the story for that. Joey actually sent me some story notes this morning, which I read over, and we're having a brainstorming meeting. Every Wednesday we have brainstorming meetings, but this upcoming Wednesday we're going to be finalizing what we want to do exactly for the story for that adventure game, and go from there. Um, as far as everything else goes, um, I'll probably shut up here in a minute and let other people talk. But since I'm the person who likes to talk, I get left to do that. Um, I did want to show some of the stuff that we've been working on recently, just so everybody can get a chance to see things beyond the Patreon page. So I'm gonna open this up here, and it's gonna cover Chris and Joey, but who cares? I'm the only one talking anyway. Um, so right off the bat, for example, we've got the core rule book that's being worked on. The past week or so, I've been in here heavily involved in working on all the races and all of the background for the main races of the world. So, for example, today I was doing wrapping up the dwarves and stuff. We also have over here, we've got the novel itself, and then I've got the base story ideas and rough notes that we've already put down based on our brainstorming sessions. And these, just for everybody tuning in, the patrons of the Patreon page get access to these documents depending on the tier that you have. Anytime that I go in and work on one of these documents, I take whatever I've worked on for the day and I put it into a Patreon post, which goes out to the patrons for that tier. So people can see it in the tier, but those of you who are signed up as patrons are also get access to these documents so that you can see things being worked on in real time. Joey's coming in and leaving notes. Chris may get involved at some point. We've talked about it. She hasn't really been involved in any of the brainstorming yet, but she's going to be. I think we're going to drag her into that no matter what she wants in that regard, because we have artwork that we want her to work on with us. Um, so there's a document for the rule set and all the stuff that's being worked on there. Then there's a document for the novel. And as I start working on chapters and everything else, as we get the outlines finalized, all that goes in there, goes into Patreon posts, and it's both for people who want to check it out in real time. And then once we get the basic core of the rule set done, I'll be opening up a third document, which is the campaign module, which is where I'm going to go in and designing out that level 1 to 5 thing. And then while I've got this open, I need to open up Incarnate so I can have that at my disposal as well. Okay, and then beyond that, I've got more stuff that I can share with you. So, because this is going to be the trailer for the Patreon post as well as for those of you who are tuned in live. So we've also got, like, I've already got the next 2 weeks of posts scheduled out basically, for tabletop and concept art and novel stuff, notes, and everything else. So there's a whole bunch of Patreon posts already ready to go. Plus, we're still doing the Lotro Cooking in Real Life series. A good example is going in here and looking at one of Christina's concept art posts, um, which you can go in here and see all the various stages of like this tree article or tree post. And this is all about the we were doing variants on trees for the brownies, who are one of the player character races, and we're going to be making them a little more rustic. But she's how many variants of trees have you done, Chris?
How many?
Yeah,
I don't remember, like five.
5 different trees. Okay. So she's been working on those. I show a couple of variants in that post. The one that we like the most, I've got up on the wall. We're going to be modifying that one to make it look a little more rustic for things. And then, of course, one other thing I've got, which I'll do another drop down here as I go over here, is so I've got a subscription to this tool called Incarnate, which is it's one of the many, many, many map making tools out there. So I've been coming in here and working on. I'll let that load. It's going to take a minute. So I'm working on the world map in there, but part of what's being worked on once I get into the campaign module is I'm actually making, so this is the world map in progress, but once the campaign module is ready to go, I'm going to be going in and doing all of the campaign maps. So all the battleground maps, all of the city maps, regional maps, and so on and so forth, so that players who are playing through the campaign module actually have all of the resources at their disposal. Plus, we're working on the character sheets right now. So there's a lot of stuff being worked on in lots of different areas. I know that at the moment, and I'll go back to check. I'll check text here in a minute in YouTube. Um, Chris, how many? What did you draw recently? Do you have your notebooks?
No, I don't have here. No,
I put them on the couch.
yeah.
You put them on the floor.
Oh, yes.
Because I think you drew like a castle yesterday. All right. While she's flipping through that and finding the piece of art she worked on yesterday, um, Joey and I have a brainstorming session coming up this Wednesday, and one of the important things for everybody who's following the Patreon is that everything we're doing about this project, every single thing we're doing is being documented. And well, I'll let you share that, Chris, here in a second. Why don't you go ahead and share that, and then I'll shut up and let you share that, and then you can show them what you worked on.
Okay, this I made this recently. I don't know if you can see.
You can bring it closer.
Yeah, yeah,
She's doing a city with mountains and towers and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
That was yesterday.
Yeah.
And then the next project, she's gonna be doing a new variant of the trees because I want the brownie houses finalized. Um, Everything we're doing is being documented. So anytime Joey and I have a brainstorming session, we record it. It gets scheduled out on YouTube, and then everybody gets to watch it. And then that's, in some cases, those will be linked to post over on Patreon where people can come in and leave their feedback and everything else. But the YouTube videos are just a way for us to share what we're working on, and then everybody who wants to support and get access to the files and everything else and the special screenshots and all the in progress work that we're doing, that's all over on the Patreon. Yes, streaming in the same room. Yes, you and your brother, I remember. Um, she's literally, if I put my hand over here, I don't know if you can see, I can't reach that far. Um, Let me go back to, let me answer questions and I'll get down to that one. It's D6 based? No, it's not. It's a mixture of D20 with D6. So it's a like I said, it's a home brewed rule set. Um, so that's a little bit different. I use D6s for a lot of different stuff. So if I had to pick a way to describe it, I'd say it's a half D6, half D20 system. So it is a hybrid system in that sense. And brownies, yes, and our brownies are very much like the brownies from Willow. This is if you when you watch the brainstorming video that we have up on Patreon, which actually I need to remember to push those live once we get done with this, because right now they're unpublished. But if you watch the brainstorming video, um, we talk about the initial source for that was it was either going to be brownies or fairies, and we were looking at the brownies from Willow or the fairy. For those of you who never watched it, there was a web show years ago called The Legend of Neil, and Felicia Day played this crazy fairy. And so when I was looking at the two sources of inspiration, I was torn between, well, if I do fairies, we're gonna have like these hyper crazy fairy types, or we'll do the brownies like inspired by the brownies from Willow, and the brownies won out at the end of the day. Um, and so when I went in and I've been fleshing out the races, the brownies are the ones that made it in as opposed to the fairies. How many races are we looking at? I can share that document again real quick. It's not finalized, but in terms of player races, um, over on the left, brownies, dwarves, elves, halflings, half elves, humans. Um, Now, of the dwarves, you're only going to be able to play hill dwarves. So this is important, and not all the races that we're going to are going to be playable races. Hill dwarves and hill dwarves will be playable. Uh, in the first campaign module, like the first rule set, I don't think mountain dwarves and primal dwarves are going to be playable, and the reason for that is lore based. there's some lore behind why they're not playable. Same thing with um, the elves. You'll be able to play probably definitely wood elves and probably sea elves. Ice elves and high elves, I'm torn on. And again, there are lore reasons why we might not be including those as player races from the beginning. Halflings, half elves, and humans. There are no half orcs, no orcs of any kind. There's no you can't play orc. Let's just leave it at that. And then halflings in this world are a little different than your traditional halflings. But these are not your Lord of the Rings halflings. These are not your traditional D&D halflings, Forgotten Realms halflings, where they're, sneaky thief-based characters. Everybody always wants to roll a halfling thief because they have the best stats. Um, I went back to Willow again because I love that movie and also the books. If you've never read the books that they did later on, the trilogy that they did, I love the idea of the Nelwyn, this gentle race of farmers who live off the grid in these hidden valleys next to sources of water. They're very nature based. Um, possibly could be a good race to be a druid, but they're farmers. They're simple people. They're not in big cities. They're not pickpockets. They're not thieves. They're not the halflings that you would see from traditional Forgotten Realms or Dungeons and Dragons. So we're doing our own kind of take on the halflings as well. Um, Yeah, keeping the Dwerhe and Illini back. Should I read the original Dragonlance trilogy with all the reading that you're doing of Forgotten Realms? Um, I would if you think you could squeeze it in. Um, I would definitely read it. I mean, I just think they're great books. Our story is going to be a lot different than that. Um, One of the things that I talk about in the novel notes, that post that's coming out on Patreon for the supporters, is all my previous work. I've either worked in first person or third person limited, and this is the first time that I've done third person omniscient, which is tricky because you're going into the heads of all the characters, and that's because I liked that from the Dragonlance books in the sense that it's not third person limited, it's third person omniscient. It's tricky. It's the first time I've done that as a writer. But that's one of the reasons that I said I wanted to use it as like the primary basis for inspiration for the style of book that I want to write. It's not that the story is going to be the same, but that style is going to be the same in the sense that that's the style of writing that I'm using to work on this new series of books, or at least the first book. We'll see where it goes beyond this first one. Joey, do you have anything that you wanted to talk about before I go back to Chris? Because
No,
otherwise, I'll
just
just talk all night.
excited to get some stuff out there for the game. So the brainstorming session Wednesday will really help me get a good grasp on what kind of levels we're gonna design and the flow of everything. It'll really help get some stuff out there.
Um, do the halflings have large hairy feet? I haven't decided that yet, actually. Um, I don't think
Large
so.
hairy hands.
Yeah, maybe. Uh, yes, Salvatore also writes that way for the Dark Elf trilogy and stuff. So, um, it's gonna be the first time I've done that, so we'll see. Um, Chris, what are you working on? You're working on the trees next. Um, I know one of the questions we had for you was, do you prefer, right? Because you're doing a lot of drawing right now. Do you prefer drawing or painting?
I prefer painting.
Now
Yeah,
she tells me.
yeah. Drawing is it's, how to say is a little hard to me. That painting is yeah.
I did share a um, TikTok
It's a
video out. Yeah, I shared a TikTok video out today, which is one of her paintings that she did for the concept art. Which, by the way, everybody should make sure that they subscribe to the TikTok, not just the YouTube, because we're doing daily snippets. Well, I'm doing daily snippets anyway. Anything that Chris and I work on, we share that out every single day on TikTok. The YouTube videos are we're probably doing 3 a week at least. Um, Consistently, we'll be doing 3 a week. We may do more, but the TikTok snippets are every single day. And then post wise for the Patreon, we're doing posts every well, it's almost every day. It's not quite every day, but it's almost every day. Depends. Joey, you can take. Are you on? Are you in the chat for YouTube, Joey?
No, no, I'm not.
Someone asked, did I always talk this much when you were younger?
I don't know. So there's a big age gap.
I was not around a lot when he was younger. I was 13 when he was born, and I was no longer living at home by the time I was barely 16. Um, so I think by the time when did I? Because I took you to see Harry Potter, right? How old were
Yes.
you then?
Gosh dang. Well, I know you took me to see Phantom Menace. I think that came out before Harry Potter.
Phantom Menace would have been 99.
That was
So how
99.
old
So
would
I'd have
you have
been
been?
like,
6?
let's see, 7. Yeah, 6 or 7.
Okay.
So,
So I
well, you were
was
you were around then quite a bit, and then when I was a teenager, you were around quite a bit. But that was also when you were working construction. So I used to come into your apartment and watch you play video games, and you didn't talk at all because you were just like, I've been at work all day. I'm just gonna play video games.
I don't remember that at all. I don't remember that. But yeah, there was a time period between like 96 and 99 that I wasn't really around at all just because of family relations and stuff. But by the time 1999 rolled around, I was at the very least living nearby and was, around once a week or so, once every couple weeks, and snuck him out to see movies that my mother was not very happy of me letting him go see. But I was always just like, I'm gonna take him to the bookstore, Mom. There's a Narnia event going on at the bookstore at
Oh, you
Hastings,
you did. I do remember taking me to that. That was
and
really
and
cool.
I would
I
take
was
him.
I was young then.
Yeah, so I would take him to these events, and then I would sneak him out, and we'd go get burgers and fries and a big ass Coca-Cola, and then he'd go home jacked up on sugar, and
and
then we would.
and filled my brain with wicked fantasy stuff, and now I love Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, all of it. Oh,
Chris is the same. What's your favorite?
terrible.
What's your favorite fantasy movie, Chris?
For me, is the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
I watched
how,
recently
it
one
doesn't
month.
get yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't get any better.
we watched the movies 1 month ago. The Lord of the
About a
Rings.
month ago, we did the Lord of the Rings trilogy in December, and then we did the Hobbit trilogy in January, and we only ever do the extended editions because that's the only way to roll. But yes, Chris was not big into fantasy before she met me, and then obviously now that we've been together, 10, 11 years now, it's rubbed off. You still don't like science fiction though. If it has aliens or yeah, she doesn't like anything with aliens in it.
No, I like it more about real life. Real life.
Yeah, because the orcs are real.
Documentaries is what.
Documentary.
Yeah.
Yes, documentary. I like.
Oh, Chris has me put on the. Uh,
Oh, on the alien show. Yeah.
yeah, Hemvar. Chris has me put on the Lord of the Rings music quite frequently when she's cleaning and just, or if she's just hanging out on the couch and she just wants to relax, she'll turn on YouTube and just put on the soundtrack and crank it up and go take a nap.
It's a great
Um,
sound.
it is a good soundtrack. Anyway, that's the basis. I don't want to do too much of a long video tonight for people because this will be also watched by folks over at the Patreon page. Um, So I will answer that question though. So science fiction is more difficult to get into because traditionally, I would say science fiction has a lot more um, science to it. And so if they've done hard science fiction, you're dealing with facts and you're dealing with logic and you're dealing with having to wrap your head around all of that stuff. Um, I would say if you look at The Expanse, that's a very good series that's incredibly complex to read and to watch as a TV show. Chris tried to watch it with me, and I think she made it through like 4 of the episodes of the first season. She was like, "I don't want to watch this anymore. It's too much. It's too many spaceships, and there's too much political stuff going on, and I'm not able to. It's just wow." So I have since watched The Expanse by myself because it's a great show. Fantasy megastructures. Um, Define what you mean by that, because I want to make sure that I know what you mean by that. And while I wait for that to happen, so for those of you who are tuning in and watching this later on, um, a lot of the information that you can find is obviously on the Patreon page itself. We're doing a lot of videos. We've already got 2 weeks of posts coming out. Joey's got a game dev post coming out this weekend. We've got another brainstorming session that we're recording Wednesday night, which is going to be for the game and also for um, some of the storyline related to the races and finalizing some more of the world story. And then every time I do anything, like today I went and worked on races, that turns into a Patreon post. Yesterday I worked on um, story structure for the world, that becomes a Patreon post. Working on rule sets, that becomes a Patreon post. Okay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So subscribing to the Patreon gets you access to all that juicy details, all of the Google Docs as well, all the concept art that we're working on, and of course you get digital copies of everything. I do want to answer the question that was asked earlier about print on demand and stuff, just as a very quick deal. Um, like I said, we'll look at it when we get to the point where it's ready to actually be pushed out the door. I don't see a need to do print on demand unless there is a large audience asking for it. Um, Print on demand, the unfortunate reality of print on demand is just in order to make something of quality, it costs so much to produce it because you're doing it print on demand as opposed to mass producing, that at the end of the day, if we want to make any money from it, we have to price it so high that people look at it and go, well, why would I pay $30 for your book when I could pick up the Dungeons and Dragons handbook for $15 on Amazon? So this is one of those things where it's tricky because there's a reason why IPAs and homebrew beers cost $7 or $8 for a bottle compared to Budweiser that only costs $3 for a bottle, as a good example, because commercial products can be produced for far less money because they're mass producing them. So it's going to depend on where we go and where we are by that point. And it depends on the popularity of this, because if this Patreon and this project grows into something that ends up having hundreds of people who are supporting it by the time we get to the point where we're ready to push these products out the door, then you can always take that and go to a publisher or go to a printer and be like, look, we've got a built-in audience of, 500, 700, 1,000 people. What kind of a deal could you make us? And they can look at that and go, oh, well, you've got at least this many people who are going to buy it. And then if we work with you and print it or produce it, we can probably sell another 1,000 copies on our end. And then it makes it worth it to work out some sort of an arrangement. So on that note, I would say to everybody who's following along, watching this video later on, if you want to make that kind of stuff happen, support the Patreon, share it out with all your friends and family, get them to support the Patreon if they're into these types of projects, and that's how we can make all that stuff happen. Mega structures like an impossibly tall spire or something similar to Moria in size. I could definitely say that the underground dwarven kingdom is already planned to be like that. And there's layers, because we're going back to the we have in the history of the world, there's the primal dwarves, then there's the mountain dwarves, and then there's the surface dwarves. And so when you get into the mountain kingdoms, we're dealing with the actual mountain kingdom, and then we're going down to the subterranean levels below that, which is where the primal dwarves, first existed, and then that's going to be an underground. I hate to steal too much from D&D in places, but the Underdark is a pretty amazing place. And yes, I'm absolutely working on the idea of a subterranean world that is populated by things. And then above ground, I don't want to spoil too much of it tonight. You're going to want to tune into the brainstorming sessions for that kind of stuff, and all the world building episodes that we do with the maps and stuff. But we've teased out the map already, and you can see it on TikTok and here on YouTube and stuff, but we can already see just what we've got right now is we've got a main continent, and on the eastern side, we've got some. sections that broke off, and then on the far northwest, we've got some frozen islands, and there's stuff going on there. And then there's a continent to the south, which is it's joined to. It's not another continent. It's just another section of that continent to the south, which you'll get access to this in the lore post that's going to go live, I think, on Thursday of this week. We talk about what happened down there to make that what it is today and why everyone's living here as opposed to there. Um, so there's lore reasons for that. So we'll get into that on I believe Thursday's post. I'm gonna go look at it real quick, make sure. What is Thursday? Thursday's the 4th. Yep. So the story ideas rough notes comes out on Thursday. So you guys will be getting all that information on that day. No, it's not hollow, but there's definitely subterranean stuff deep, deep, deep down. But above ground, no, I don't think there's any. Not that we've planned or talked about anyway yet. There's no major structures like that in the top side. There are some pretty big mountains and some stuff going on there, but no major structures like that. So, um, yeah, so that's the basic structure that we're getting into. Posts are coming out. The idea right now, the rough idea is we're gonna have posts coming out Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. And then in between that, basically it's every Tuesday is a book or concept art related post. Every Thursday is a tabletop story building or world building post. And then every Saturday is a game dev post related to the adventure game that Joey's building. Chris, right now, you're only doing landscapes, right? Vistas? You're not doing any people yet? Have you,
No,
have,
people no, only landscape, yes.
yeah, only
Yeah,
landscapes. I don't know that you've ever done people yet, have you? Have you ever tried to do people or anything?
yes, I have tried, but it's no good. Still, no, I need to practicing more. Yeah, I need to practice more. Yeah, about drawing people. Yeah.
So, as an FYI, and I mentioned this somewhere in the Patreon post, um, Chris has always had a passion for drawing and painting, and it's since he was a kid. But it's always just been something she's done for herself. So she's never applied it to a project before. So this is the first time that she's ever applied it to a project before. So she's still, this is a learning project for her more than anything else in the sense that she's doing a bunch of like she's testing herself right now with all the pencil sketches that you're doing, but then you're also doing some painted versions of those. Um, and then we're just going to see where that goes from here. I already told her that I'm going to probably have her do some because I like the style. If you look at some of the early Guild Wars 2 concept art, they did they did their humanoids in a way that didn't require a lot of fine detail. So it was kind of like very rough painting or very rough sketching. So it was a very, rough style of art that didn't have a lot of detail to it. And she's capable of that because she's done some tests of that stuff. But I don't know that she's at the moment anyway, like she already said, doing actual humanoids and stuff of that is something that she's going to be working on and seeing if she could do that or not. But that's one of those things that we talk about in the Patreon as well. As we get deeper into the project, one of the hopes that we're having for this is that if we hit our monthly goals, I think the first monthly goal is $3,000 a month. So if we get to the point where we're making $3,000 a month with Patreon, we're hiring another concept artist to come in and work with us. And if she hasn't gotten her head wrapped around um, doing humanoids at that point and creatures, then that would probably who we contract at that point is somebody who can come in and start doing that aspect of it for the art for the tabletop book and all the modules and stuff. But I'm gonna make you work, Chris. Sorry, I'm gonna push your limits, see how far you can go, see what you're capable of. Fingers crossed. As far as the the stuff that Joey's working on, um, Unreal has been pretty easy to jump into. I know you've been working on tutorials for the last couple of months. Um, it's pretty similar to Unity in a lot of ways, but it's the
It's a
same.
game engine.
It's a game engine. Once you know one game engine, you know all the game engines. So the work on that actually kicks off this week. Um, we've been doing just ideas. We threw around a lot of ideas over the last couple of months of what kind of game we wanted to do and what we were going to be capable of doing. Because having worked for the last 6.5 years with a very large team, none of us have any desires to do that anymore. It's yeah, this is something that's much easier for us to just keep it in house, and if we work with a couple other people on it, that'll be great. But it's much easier for us. And then anything that he can't do or he needs help with, once I wrap up, yeah, I know, whatever, he's fine. He'll get it all done. But the idea is that by the time I wrap up all the work on the tabletop and um, novel work, which I anticipate will take me 6 to 8 months to get all that stuff done, then he'll be at a place where I can jump in and start working on implementing quests and the narrative.
Which Unreal makes it pretty easy to work on projects together, it
Yeah.
seems.
So that'll be later in the year. I'll be jumping in the engine at some point. At some point later on down the road, but that's not priority for me right now. The priority for me right now is, it just depends on the day, but I'll probably be averaging 2 to 3,000 words a day, between story notes, working on races, working on stuff like that. I think was it last night we were talking? I've probably already got just to get the races and the world history and the story outline and the first few chapters of the book going and everything else. I've got 3 months of work already, like, ready. Like, I've got enough work to keep me busy for 3 months, and that's just getting the rest of the story done, the rest of the racial stuff done, all of the sub-race stuff written. We got to do the Pantheon of the Gods, so we have to write all the history for the Pantheon of the Gods and what's going on up there that's causing all the stuff that's happening down here. Um, and then we have to do the whole outline for the first book, which will probably be, I'm going to shoot for a 150,000 word novel. So if we do like 4,000, I won't do 4,000 word chapters. I'll probably do like 2 to 3,000 word chapters. So, we're looking at a pretty hefty book, probably 50 chapters, um, somewhere in that ballpark. And then, like I said, the campaign module will be the first 5 levels. And as far as the rulebook goes, I'm not planning on this first rulebook being super intensive like the, D&D. They've got a rulebook that's been being expanded upon for the past, 50 years. So I'm doing, for this first version, I'm doing a much simpler, uh, modified version. So, it'll probably end up being a 50 to 60 page rule set. Who knows? I'm literally just making that up off the top of my head right now, but that's what I'm thinking it'll end up being. And we'll go from there. So I would say if anybody else has any final questions while we're sitting here, now would be the time. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap this up because we're 50 minutes in. Do, 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 do. Oh, I didn't mean to take that out of large screen. There we go. Click the wrong button. Deities. Yeah, this is a little different because I didn't do deities with specifically I didn't do deities with the Saga of Leucemia. I didn't want to do a pantheon of gods. I left it up to the reader. Um, no, that annoyed me, by the way. He made a whole novel out of a, well, I mean, 80,000 words is a novel for some like debut authors. It was ridiculous. Um, I won't be doing that, no. And I'll say this much because I did 7,000 word chapters for Saga of Leucemia, and the new sci-fi novel that I was working on, I did 3,000 word chapters, and I'll be probably shrinking it down even more. I really like some of the stuff I've read from like Kevin J. Anderson and Stephen King and other writers talking about, 2,000, 3,000 word chapters. 2,000's a good, just the way the modern reader reads these days. We're not, when the first Dragonlance novels were written, as an example, or when the first Wheel of Time novels were written, this was pre-internet. So people were in a world where they would sit down and they would read for large chunks of time. People don't always read like that anymore. A lot of people read on the train, on the metro, on the bus. They read when they have 10-minute chunks of time. And so they don't want to have to read and stick a bookmark in it and get lost somewhere in the middle of a 7,000 word chapter. Um, so I've started to modify my writing a little bit more with some of the more recent works I'm doing, where I'm making the chapters much shorter to accommodate for that. So this new novel will probably, like I said, 2,000 word chapters, maybe 3,000 word chapters for some of the ones that need a little bit more meat on their bones. But I also, 2,000 is not a hard limit. There might be some chapters that are shorter than that because we have a very quick scene that has to be written. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to call it a wrap here. Chris, you're working on, like I said, you're working on trees next. Joey and I have a brainstorming session on Wednesday where we're finalizing everything so that he can start cranking out stuff on the adventure game. We've got 2 weeks of posts already going out on Patreon. You should definitely sign up to TikTok because we're doing daily updates there. Also, if you haven't already done so and you're tuning into this later on, subscribe to the YouTube channel because there are lots of updates that happen here. And I'm still doing all the other stuff I do on YouTube, but these types of videos, we're going to be doing the brainstorming videos once a week. I've got world building videos that are coming out once a week. And then I already asked Chris, you said yes, I could record you doing paintings and stuff. So I'll probably be doing some time lapse videos of her doing some concept art and painting for YouTube. So there'll be 2 to 3 videos every single week coming on YouTube, daily stuff on TikTok, and 3 to 5 posts per week coming out on Patreon. And for those of you who are watching this later on or whatever, depending on what you want to see, we've got a variety of new tiers up on Patreon. So the first tier is for everybody who's interested in the books and the concept art. So if you're interested in the book series and the concept art, that's the first tier. And the second tier is for everybody who's interested in the tabletop work that's being done, the campaign module, all the maps that I'm making for the campaigns and everything else. That's all included in the second tier. The third tier is for people who are interested in the adventure game that's being worked on. And then the fourth tier, I think, is the Zoom call, a monthly Zoom call um, with us. Later on, once I've got the core rule set lined out and we've got the first campaign ready to go, we're going to be opening up another tier, which is a limited edition tier that's only going to have 8 spots available, and that's going to be reserved for the 8 people who are going to come in and play test that first campaign module and the rules set, and we're going to be playtesting that live with Roll20 here on YouTube, but that's going to be later on. We probably won't open that up for 3 to 4 months because I got to get the first core rules in, the first rough draft of the campaign module done. But once that's ready to go, we're going to be playtesting that live with people, and then we've got 2 other high-end tiers, we're calling them, which will come out around the same time, which will feature some unique stuff like being able to come in and design modules with us for the campaign setting, as well as creating NPCs, creating items for the game, naming items in the game, naming NPCs in the game, coming up with lore, so on and so forth. So stay tuned for all that stuff. That's all coming in the pipeline. In the meantime, it's all about the book that's being written, the tabletop stuff that's being worked on, and the adventure game that's being created with all of Chris's concept art that she's doing now that I finally got her doing concept art on a project for a change. So hopefully that appeals to you. If you've got questions, don't forget to let us know. You can either drop them here in YouTube, over in Discord. Links are below. Also, subscribe to Patreon. That's going to be the best way for you to stay up to tune with what we're doing on this project and everything we're working on. So I'll give everybody a chance to say bye and I'll shut up now. So from me, I'm saying good night. Thanks for tuning in. I don't know.
Yes, good night, everyone. See you next time.
See you guys. Thanks for showing up and supporting us, and looking forward to it.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. We will see you soon in the next videos and all the cool stuff.